Hello there, people of the internet. This right here is a video series that I'm doing talking about the history and development of all of my stuff, and hopefully this earns your subscription because I'm doing this in an effort to earn my way up to 100,000 subscribers. So if you want to be around for that, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because boy, oh boy, am I definitely trying. Now, if the history and development of my firearms is not enough to get you to subscribe, maybe something a little bit more simple will. Who doesn't love that sound, right? So, today we're talking about the M1 Garand. This right here is a semi-automatic 30-06 used by the United States government for quite a while. Before we get into the M1 Garand, let's talk about why the United States was moving towards self-loading rifles. Where do you think you're going? After World War I, it was becoming very obvious that the long manually operated rifles, such as the 1917 and Mauser variants, and insert your choice of country using insert their choice of bolt-action rifle, bolt-action rifles were pretty much antiquated technology after the First World War. And so countries were starting to look into and move more towards self-loading rifle technology. Now, of course, Germany would dislike what happened to it after the First World War, and they would kind of push themselves to doing some not good stuff, and that would give way to World War II. And just because of countries already having these stockpiles of these antiquated bolt-action rifles, they would continue to use these bolt-action rifle systems. Not only were they stockpiled and very easy to produce and very simple and very well-known, well-proven designs, but these countries already had the tooling and the know-how and the masses to be able to manufacture this stuff. However, in the mid-ish 1930s, the United States was looking to adopt a self-loading rifle, and so a Canadian by the name of, well, we're going to go ahead and call him Mr. Garand or Garand, however it is that you feel like pronouncing that. No matter how it is that I pronounce his name, I get yelled at in the comments. So, Mr. Garand, he ended up creating this rifle. This was a self-loading in-block clip system rifle, and originally this was chambered for a .276 cartridge, and it held a 10-round capacity inside of the magazine. Well, the United States, after deciding that this was going to be the rifle that they were going to go ahead and go with, they basically told Mr. Garand, hey, we already have like 7 billion rounds of 30-06 ammunition on standby, so rechamber the rifle for 30-06 and you got yourself a deal. We'll go ahead and adopt it. And so that's exactly what happened. The rifle was rechambered for 30-06 as opposed to the .276 cartridge that it was originally going to be chambered in, which was a primer actuated system and whatnot. They ended up going with a gas piston operated system, which is a much more simple, easy design to utilize than something like a primer actuated system. And the United States tooled up to be able to manufacture these en masse. By the time that the United States got involved in the Second World War, this had taken the place of basically all of the bolt-action rifles, with the exceptions of snipers or Marine Corps or any of those specialized units who would still be using the bolt-action rifles. The self-loading M1 Garand was by far and large the standard infantry rifle given to United States military forces before the Second World War, and it went into the Second World War. Now, of course, this rifle won its way through our Second World War, and it won its way through a good amount of Korea, and it's won its way through some limited service in Vietnam. There were a lot of U.S. conflicts that utilized this rifle, and utilized this rifle extremely effectively. So with this being an in-block clip system, this does hold 8 rounds. This is an 8-round capacity for this rifle. And it's not the easiest rifle to load. You got to hold your charging handle back with your hand, with the palm of your hand, while you load your system. Otherwise, you risk getting Garand thumb, however it is you want to pronounce that. Whenever the bolt flies forward while you're still trying to load the firearm, and your thumb gets caught inside of the bolt as it goes forward. Now, there are some safety features built into the rifle to kind of prevent that from happening. But if you don't engage those safety features properly by not properly loading the rifle, or if the rifle is particularly what's the word I'm looking for? Particularly worn out, or the clip itself could potentially be particularly worn out as well. Then you risk that bolt sliding forward and smacking into your hand and sending your thumb into the chamber, which is the exact opposite of what you want. Now, as far as old school battle rifles go, this coming out in the 1930s is by far one of the best options that you could have for that time period. The in-block clips, although this is a very long length action with a very long length cartridge, 30-06 is quite sizable. The in-block clips are still going to be a dramatically lighter weight than carrying around some sort of magazine, probably steel at that particular time period. But those magazines would be dramatically heavier in comparison to something like an in-block clip. So although the in-block clip is not the greatest of it has its drawbacks, but the benefits also outweigh those drawbacks in a lot of different ways. Now, of course, the M1 Garand is most famous for its time during the Second World War. Korea, for whatever reason, here inside the United States, just doesn't have the notoriety that the World War does, despite the fact that it was very much a very high-end. No, that's not really the term I'm looking for. It was a very intense conflict. I think a lot of people lean towards the Second World War because it was, well, a very intense conflict. But it seems like, for whatever reason, Korea has just kind of been... The conflicts of Korea have been forgotten and lost to time. People focus on World War II, and then they focus on Vietnam for whatever reason. Well, the M1 Garand served its way through the Second World War in many branches of the armed forces. Served alongside these bolt-action rifles. But with these bolt-action rifles, basically every country, besides like the exception of Russia, they did have a lot of self-loading rifles, but for the most part, their standard infantry rifle was the Mosin Nagant. The Germans had self-loading rifles. Their standard infantry rifle was the Kar 98. The Italians had their Carcanos. The Japanese had their Arisakas. These countries did have self-loading rifles, but nobody was able to quite compete and stack up to the amount of self-loading rifles that the United States was able to give to its armed forces literally en masse. So now, all of that being said, I think I've pretty much covered most of the history of the M1 Garand. If we're going to talk about like a brief generic history, of course I could start going into much more in-depth history, like the complications of the M1 Garand whenever it was first being developed, and how, like, for example, that 7th round jam that would consistently happen depending on the orientation of the magazine, or not magazine, the clip, the way it was loaded and whatnot, inside of the rifle's internal magazine. There's quite a few things that I could go over with this, but I'm trying to keep these videos short, so I gave you guys just a generic history of the rifle. Now I've got a round inside of this. This is just M2 ball ammo, because I do not have an updated gas system inside of this, and we don't want the gas piston or the gas operating rod inside of this system, inside of the rifle here, to bend. Now, I am told that commercial loads to certain levels or certain weights or certain pressures will not be a problem inside of this system, and then there's other people who will tell me the contrary. I have legitimately, with my own eyes, watched an operating rod inside of one of these rifles bend from commercial loaded ammo. It was a 150 grain projectile, so the weight of the projectile didn't seem to matter, and it was just a standard commercial load. I think it was loaded by Federal or something like that. And with modern technology, we literally have footage of commercial ammo being compared to M2 ball ammo. And we can see just how much harder these rifles are ran with that increase in pressure. So you do want to pay attention to the types of ammunition that you are using inside of these rifles, and you want to make sure that you're not pushing them harder than they are designed to be pushed. They're designed for a very specific kind of ammunition, the M2 ball round. That's a 150 grain projectile traveling at about 2,800 feet per second. Now, commercial loadings are going to be more like a 150 grain bullet traveling at about 3,000 feet per second, so that is going to be faster. More pressure is going to be generated inside of that gas system, and that's going to run your rifle harder, so that's going to potentially bend or break something. So all of that being said, I have one single round of 30-06 because M1 Garand 30-06 is expensive. So we're going to go ahead and send a round downrange at our car. This is just standard full metal jacket. And well, let's see if we hit anything. Actually, I'm going to aim for my steel target out there. It's pretty covered in grass, though. Let's see if I can hit it. Aha! I did hit it, and now it is gone. It has disappeared. And of course, whenever the rifle is out of ammunition, the in-block clip comes flying out, and we get the delightful little ping sound. Okay, folks, well, I think I've covered basically everything with this rifle. Hopefully this earned your subscription. If not, then I guess I'll have to try again tomorrow, because I'm trying to make one of these videos every day. Doesn't always work out that way, but boy, am I trying. So I want to hit that 100,000 subscriber mark, and I'd like to hit it as soon as possible. That would be fantastic. Thanks for watching, folks. I appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. Description below has a link to all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. You guys go off, have yourself a fantastic day, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. Poor man's Garand. Shame that bolt action shotguns aren't more mainstream.